Hello, guys. TheSuffolkRam here from Rant Nerds. I've just come from watching the Deus Ex gameplay video they released a few days ago, and I just want to sort of share my thoughts on it, really, and have a pastoral ramble on about them as they do. Looks fairly interesting. I mean, I must say, I'm really looking forward to doing a new Deus Ex. I just hope they stick to what made Human Revolution great. They don't go too mad. From what they're saying, seems like they're being quite sensible about it. But I always have worries and fears whenever a sequel comes out. I call it the Invisible War effect, that they're going to just sort of miss the mark. So if you don't know much about the game, just very brief summary. Human Revolution was meant to be the height of arguments when they sort of finally come mainstream. I loved the, lots of people were using them, a lot of powerful people had them. There was a resistance to them called Purity First, people who wanted to, basically didn't like the idea of arguments and wanted to sort of say humans were best per, as always is in any sort of new social change and revolution. But at the end of it, something happens. I won't go into full details of what actually happens. And the game, which is set 2 years later, augments are now no longer trusted after what happened. And if you play the game, you understand why what happened. Or if you look on the wiki and see how it's going to spoil it for you. I'd say watching it, interesting actually how similar the game starts. The intro especially, sorry if you can hear noise background, it's my dog. The game starts very, very similar to the other one. You saw zoom straight into Adam's through Adam's head, and you're on the train. I'm assuming this is the intro, the train station section. I'm assuming it's the intro. You see him through the back of Adam's head, and then next thing you know, you're walking down, being shown around by what I forgot her name. Unfortunately, we watched the video. But you're being shown around by this lady, very similar to how Megan does in the first Deus Ex. And it ends with an attack. Now, I don't know if that attack is going to then go into the tutorial mode, presumably, where you'll then have to sort of fight the guys off and learn about how the combat and so forth, or whether you just simply, a bit like the end of the intro to Human Revolution, you go unconscious and then you wake up. Obviously, you can't wake up enhanced again, but you might well do, possibly knocked back a little bit because of all the attack has probably damaged you in some way and you get something back, perhaps. It's interesting, you've got some new characters in there. I mean, we shot the first new character I know was a character called Chicane, who's your helicopter pilot. I think you're going to have him very similar to your relationship with Pritchard from Human Revolution. He seems quite snarky, and doesn't quite like you. So I think presumably you're going to go for the same sort of bond with Pritchard, where you start off not liking each other, and then after over the course of time you'll get to be friends. I do sort of quite like him so forth. I like the fact that at one point he comments that he'll get your stuff to you once this important stuff to help you escape once he's finished drinking his cup of coffee. And obviously he's probably, I'm sure, something serious, but it does seem it's going to be a bit more of an interesting, less a dislikeful relationship, but not an aggressive dislikeful relationship. That could be quite interesting. I mean, on to the major changes of Deus Ex. First thing, also, you notice the update of the interface. I've noticed there's no battery slots anymore. They seem to have gone. So presumably what's going to happen now is your augments are going to be a bit more like the original Deus Ex. Your augments will drain a resource, presumably at different rates, depending on what type of augment are. Some point drain it more than others, presumably. Presumably that's going to work. I also wonder if does it mean that in Human Revolution, where you can recover some of your energy naturally, do you now recover energy all the way up to the top now? Does it just take a little bit longer? Interesting. We've also got a new way of modifying your weapons. You've got gun customization into screen. So basically, you actually look at the gun, you can pick all the ammo or the attachments. That's kind of neat. Doing game. Apparently, you can do it, and from what they say, you can do it on the fly, so you can just change it boom there and then. Looks interesting. I like the idea personally of being able to sort of customize a gun. That then it's fixed. That is then your gun. You know, if you can shot up and change all the time, that just seems a little bit less interesting. Obviously, ammo makes sense. Switching between ammo types makes sense. But it'd be nice. I'm hoping that there'll be some customizations. Once you do them, you can't then go back on them. I think that'd be quite neat. Hacking has changed, only minorly. You still hack evasive interfaces as before, except for the looks of it, you can't see where the layout is. And I think this could be a huge challenge, because when I used to play with I would look at the hacking screen first before you even click the thing. I would look to see how it was laid out. I would look to try and work out exactly where and how I was going to work. I used to plan my route through this map, as it were, of how I was going to get to my target nodes. And by making it so it disappears, I think could be quite interesting. I think it's going to make it so that you won't be able to just randomly. You're going to have to work a bit more on the fly, and perhaps feel more like hacking. That I think looks quite cool, and that's what I'm hoping they will actually sort of do. Or I'd be really disappointed if it goes down the route of just like some predefined routes you see commonly between things. That would be a bit disappointing. So some light things. The environment itself look a lot more cluttered, a lot more detailed. They look a little more interactive. You see bits in the combat where stuff gets blown away. That looks really neat. And it looks beautiful. I mean, I really do think it looks a really beautiful game. And I'm quite pleased with how it's looking at the moment. I hope they keep up what they're doing. I think that looks really, really rather neat. When they show us a bit about the stealth, stealth looks interesting. I noticed, it took me a second viewing to notice this. But it appears you have a bit like Far Cry, where you have a little blip that appears on your screen as you are gradually spotted, sort of fills up, and then plink, you've been spotted. I noticed that. I did notice it the very first time I watched it. Interestingly, it's very subtle, but when I said I watched it, I thought it's there. I can see it, and that is interesting because I like Far Cry's mechanic, but I don't dislike the idea of having to sort of listen to your enemies in order to work out what's happening, what's going on. So I'm in two minds about whether I like that or not. It feels like they've just copied it verbatim from Far Cry. It just feels a bit odd. So I'm not so keen on that, I don't think, at the moment. Takedown's obviously back. You get nice to take away headbutt somebody rather than that big old, which doesn't any less damaging than when you used to just sort of proper fist them in the face and knock them out completely. The combat side of it looks more different. I mean, there's obviously a new mode where you can dash from cover to cover. That looks interesting. That looks a bit neat. I mean, obviously you could jump from cover to cover in the previous one, but the dash looks quite neat. But I also noticed at some point he appears to charge him. I don't know if this is an augment or not, but he does appear to actually charge someone quite late on. I'm assuming it's not an augment, it's just a normal move you can do. Because what they've said is basically they want to make combat. They felt combat in the first game, when I say first game, Human Revolution, was rather weak. What they've said is they want to make combat more stealth. They felt that stealth was the sort of way they expected to go. I can sort of see that. I think most people were so concerned that stealth was going to. I think they probably got to the point where they thought, well, anyone's really concerned about stealth in this game. Let's make sure that any stealth in it. Let's make sure stealth is really good. And they probably let combat go a little bit. This one is going to focus more on combat. Now, I'm not so worried about it. Some people are a bit concerned. I'm not worried about concerned because as long as they maintain the stuff that they've got, the system they've got works pretty darn well. Let's maintain it. Let's keep it going. That works quite well. I have no interest to make combat my thing. The idea about to run through the game like a proper first-person shooter, great. I wouldn't do it, but if you want to play the game like that, fine by me. Don't see an issue. That's the whole point of Deus Ex. You have to play it as you want. Although I never thought you could replay Deus Ex original one that much as a run and gunner. They say you can, but I don't think you could really effectively because you're just so fragile, even with all the modifications. But that's me for you. I did notice they've got a slow-mo mode they call Focus, which all games seem to call a slow-mo mode Focus these days. I'm always in two minds about slow-mo. Slow-mo can be done well. It looks quite cool. I just see it game well. It has its advantage, but I always feel I see slow-mo now, it just feels really corny. I don't quite know how to describe it. I thought Fear did slow-mo, original Fear did slow-mo very well, obviously, which it copied from Max Payne, which was sort of the original slow-mo, but there's something a bit naff about slow-mo. I just don't quite get it. I mean, it looks beautiful, but I don't quite get it, so not sure, but I'll probably have to worry about that if I'm doing my stealth route through the game. We have got a few returning augments from the previous game. So we've got I only picked out 3 of them when I watched this. There might be some more. I noticed we've got the cloak is back. Not surprised that's back. I was allowed to move place to place unseen. I noticed the Icarus landing system still, its little bit where you can jump down and sort of stay by nearby. Noticed that's back. I noticed the vision enhancement mod is back. Allowing you to look through walls, and there's a point where you do a takedown through a wall. Again, presumably very similar to the previous game. But there's a lot of new ogs they showed us in this game. Lots of new ogs they showed us. The first sort of, if you're a stealth player, is the stun gun arm, which is what I've called it, where he gets out his arm and sort of like tags 4 people. I'm assuming it's max of 4 people, and he stuns them all simultaneously. Looks really overpowered. Looks quite fun. I'm assuming it's going to be quite a high level. You have to take a lot of work to get that unlocked. But looks really too much. I like when I'm doing stealth games. Part of stealth is I want to feel both powerful but also incredibly vulnerable. That's my idea of perfect stealth. You should feel like you're the. Oh, sorry. You should feel like you're the most powerful person in the game. That everybody's terrified of you. But at the same time, you should feel like you're incredibly vulnerable. That at any moment, it just takes a few people to spot you, and that's it. You've had it. And that just feels like too much of a advantage. So presumably it's going to be incredibly high cost to use, and it's going to be obviously quite a lot of work to get to. That's the only way sort of think to balance that out. It's got this new one called Blink. Sorry, no, not Blink. Icarus Dash. But it is basically Blink. Presumably Adam got given to him by a Og who dressed looked like an emo, black hair and black nail polish, black eyes, and made very vague comments about how much he was finding him really interesting to watch. Again, it looks like this is probably verbatim. Remote hacking. You can now hack things remotely, and sort of get things and sort of take control of things separately, which looks quite neat, quite interesting. Again, looks like something that could be useful for a stealth character. Possibly also for a combat character, hack a turret remotely. Presumably you can. Away you go. Perhaps you can hack a bot remotely. Looks even cool. Their big one they kept pushing was the Nano Blade, which basically is your nano fish which you had before, the little blades that carry your arm, but you can now shoot them. Not quite sure that because I don't know quite where he's storing all these bits. I mean, I can't really comment too much because with all the ammo he carries around, but yeah, you can shoot them out. And you have something big explosive that looks a bit odd. You've also got the Titan Shield, which literally he allows him to place armor over himself, protect himself from enemy fire, and basically becomes, I'm assuming, short-term vulnerable. Again, makes me think of Crysis' armor mode, but basically become vulnerable for a very short moment. They also have the Pep's gun arm, which again looks another sort of stealthy person thing. You can now stun a load of people. I'm wondering now I've seen that, now thinking about it, I wonder if that is tied into the other stunning modes. Perhaps they are tied together. That's the Peps are having the Peps are allowing you to that sort of target 2 or 3 people and stun them, or if you can just like target a big area. Looks interested. So I do quite like the looks of the new Og. Some of them do feel a bit copied. I do have some concerns over it. More so than Who Revolution, it just feels a little bit like, I think the gameplay made me feel a bit too gun home, shooty bang bang. It felt so too much, and I have got concerns that it's going down the route of lots of guns and shooting, and I do have some concerns there. I just hope they maintain that stealth aspect. I mean, I mentioned earlier how I don't mind having that in there, but I would like to see a gameplay video where they show that in more depth. They did the good one where you could do it the 3 ways. I'd like to see if they do that again for this one. It'd be cool to see a tackle mission in 3 ways. Of course, the game raises a few questions. There is a lot of things left out of the game that we have at the trailer we don't know, and also I'm assuming these will probably crop up. Things like what happened to the groups and characters in the previous game. I mean, Purity First, are they still around? Sounds to me they should have quite a big role, because obviously they're very anti-augments. Have they got some sort of power now? Have their people involved now got into some positions where they have control? Are we going to get any returning characters? Now, obviously, again, spoiler alert, depending on how he ended the previous game, there might not be any characters left to return. So, what's going to happen? I'm really quite... I have got questions. Also, I'm going to keep those. They're going to be kept obviously very quiet. And I'm sure they'll all get answered. As a final bonus, we get to see the Chain Fist again. The guy comes out and he appears with his Chain Fist again, so that's cool. I'm sure it's not called a Chain Fist in the game, but I think it looks like Chain Fist. That's my sort of quick, rambly thoughts of Deus Ex. So, until I see you again, thanks for watching. See you then.